This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Tennessee General Assembly has completed the first month of its second session and, like a political locomotive, is slowly beginning to gain momentum on some of the major issues before it. We'll talk about that on the show today with our panel. First, next to me is Tom Humphrey of the Knoxville News-Sentinel. Next to him is Andrea Zalewski of the Nashville Post. And next to her is Chaz Sisk of the Tennessean. Thank you all for coming on the show today.
Good to be here.
Tom, so far no major legislation has passed much in this first month. I guess that's not really unusual. The legislature is a little like a cold car on a cold morning. It takes a while to get things warmed up.
Yes, there are some procedural difficulties built in there where they have to pass on first and second consideration and so forth before sending it to a committee. They're about there. They picked up this last week. About 2,500 total bills pending. About 1,300 of those introduced this year new. So,
Andrea, the one that seems to have the most momentum for getting through that would be of a major nature is the long talked about wine and grocery stores bill. It's passed the full Senate about 10 days ago. It's making a lot of momentum this week in the House.
Yeah, it is. So they essentially split up the two major parts of the bill in order to get it through House committees last week, and this week they melded them both together. So now we have a vehicle for it to get over to the House floor. Still has a couple more committee hearings to go, but there's also a bill following it. So if anything were to happen to the first one, they've got a backup.
And they had that problem last year. I think that's why they have multiple legislation, just to make sure it gets a whoops, they've got something else to pick it up.
Better safe than sorry.
Chaz, it looks like whatever the House passes will be a little different from the Senate, so we're talking about conference committee between the two houses. What are the devils left in the details on what the final legislation is going to look like?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest difference between the two is the cutoff, how big a store needs to be to start selling wine. The Senate version sets the cutoff at 1,200 square feet. The House version sets it at 2,000 square feet. You're really talking about convenience store size, either at 1,200 or 2,000. The difference between the two is the Senate bill would bring in about 2,000 stores statewide. The House version about 1,500.
Now, Tom, what I've just heard from the public, the two things I hear in pushback about that. First is we have to wait all the way to 2016 until this happens. Is there any chance the legislature might change that date, or is that just part of the deal that's been worked out to get this legislation
that's
approved?
the deal that's been worked out, save the little things to quibble over that Chaz has. I think that bill will still get a lot of discussion on the floor, especially in the House, and probably there will be various attempts to amend it. It's basically a really good deal for the liquor stores. They get to sell cigarettes and beer and doodads starting July the 1st of this year. The retailers have to wait until 2016 before they can start selling wine, and then they have to go through the referendum process first, and then it's got a 20% markup, guaranteed profits for everybody. It's not really a consumer-friendly bill, but it's ordained by the negotiations, blessed by the speakers, and probably will pass.
Andrea, I also hear some complaints from people about, what do you mean I won't be able to buy wine on Sundays? Is that a Bible Belt type of regulation?
Yeah, and it doesn't look like that's something that is even being talked about as something that could change under this bill. Of all the things that are the little gears that are in the works that can be moved around, that's not one of them.
Now, Chaz, this will require referendums in cities and counties that already have package stores or have liquor by the drink. That, I think, is well over close to half the counties in the state. Do you expect to see a lot of action on this as early as the November election this year to get this done?
Well, I mean, it'd be hard to say. It depends on what you mean by a lot. I certainly think that some of your larger counties, like Davidson County, would probably jump on it pretty quickly. I think it's 49 out of the 95 counties either have liquor by the drink or package stores.
Tom, with these on the ballot in a lot of the major cities coming up in November, it looks like the focus of those number of elections, instead of being on the governor's race and the U.S. Senate race, we may be looking more at referendums with these, plus the constitutional amendments, and there's at least 3, if not 4 of them coming up on the November ballot.
Right, and we already have groups organizing on some of those constitutional amendments to push judicial selection, for example, the Judicial Selection Amendment, and the Abortion Amendment has groups organizing on both sides. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of attention to that. It may be more interesting than anything on the general election ballot.
Do you expect a couple of those amendments to be major fights? Do you think the abortion amendment will be a major fight? What about the one involving judicial selection?
Well, the judicial selection one is going to be tricky because it's a hard thing to sell to voters. I know that the governor's idea or thought is that, just a yes, yes, yes campaign to make it easy for voters. But some of these issues are going to be kind of nuanced. I imagine the abortion folks are going to, be coming out and trying to campaign as well for a no vote on this.
Chaz, at this point, does it appear either Governor Haslam or Senator Alexander are really going to have a problem either getting to November or getting elected when they get there?
Well, it doesn't seem like that's something they're going to have much of a problem. No, I mean Joe Carr trails far behind Senator Alexander in terms of fundraising, and the governor still doesn't have anybody really stepping in against him. So it looks like that's going to be easy races for both of them.
Tom, there was another constitutional amendment on the floor of the Senate this week. It wouldn't be on this year's ballot, but it would allow the voters to elect the Attorney General. Right now, that's selected by the Supreme Court. That failed.
That failed in the
Now,
Senate
the
floor.
Republicans don't like the Attorney General, in part he's appointed by what they consider to be a Democrat Supreme Court, but also he's given some rulings that they don't always like. But that's not why that was defeated, right? I think the senators maybe want another way to change the Constitution about electing the Supreme
The
Court.
Senate has already approved of its first go-around and let the legislature pick the Attorney General. So that is they would rather, like they do the Comptroller, the Treasurer, Secretary of State now, they would let the legislature pick the Attorney General under the one that is already approved. So the amendment that failed this week for a popular election was sort of in competition with that. I would add that neither one has passed the House yet, and it's got a long way to go.
And it would be another 4 years from now before that would be on the ballot.
Correct.
Let's take a break. We're talking about legislative issues as the legislature winds up its first month of its second term. The governor also made the State of the State address this week. We'll talk about the reaction to that, both with lawmakers and in the media. We'll talk about that after we return from this break. Stay with us.